Hello there, this is Professor Hildebrandt. This is the first part of a three-part lecture series on Chapter 4 from our text on supply and demand. So in this part, Part A, I'm going to cover demand. There's a second video where I cover supply, and then in the third video we finally bring the two together to form our markets and talk about those a bit. So we discussed in earlier chapters the difference between a pure command and a pure capitalism type of economy. And so when we're talking about markets, we're usually talking about a market economy where resources are allocated with a minimal government interference. We're not pure capitalism. We still have a central figure. We still have that government. But for the most part, the government stays out of the markets. This then brought us to a discussion earlier on Adam Smith, kind of that classical economist who described this invisible hand, these unseen forces that will move resources to where they're best used, okay? And so price then plays a crucial factor in a market economy. Competitive and imperfect markets, I'm not going to get into that. It's more of a micro concept. So I have micro videos if you're interested in learning more about those. So talking about demand, I think sometimes students can get confused about the word demand because y'all interchange it with the idea of a want, but they are not the same thing. So yes, if you demand it, you do want it, but you also have the ability to purchase it, and that's the biggest difference, right? Like, check out this shiny car right here. A lot of us might want a $100,000 sports car, but most of us don't have the ability to purchase a $100,000 sports car. Therefore, we may want it, but we do not demand it, okay? So, going back to chapter 1, people have unlimited wants. They have unlimited desires for all these different goods and services. The problem is due to scarcity. Again, that was a topic in chapter 1. So due to scarcity, the fact that we do not have enough resources, we have to make choices, okay, about which wants we will satisfy. And that's where demand comes in. So demand reflects a choice that we have made about how we're going to use our scarce resources. So some terms that we're going to use throughout this chapter and really throughout the course. You need to know the difference between demand and quantity demanded. They are not the same thing. So I start off by saying demand is this entire relationship, okay? Let's pick a good. Our first example, I think, is going to be pizza. So we'll start off with pizza. So demand is the entire relationship between the price of the pizza and the quantity that consumers are willing and able to buy, okay? We then take that relationship and we can graph it, and we get a demand curve. It's going to be this downward sloping line. It's going to look something like this. We'll have price up here. We'll have quantity on the horizontal. And here will be our downward sloping demand curve, showing this relationship between price and quantity, okay? But this is different from the second term here, quantity demanded. Quantity demanded is how many pizzas am I buying at one price? And so we describe it as a point on the demand curve. So if the price is $10 for a pizza, I'm at point A on my demand curve, and my quantity demanded is 10 pizzas a day. Okay, so that's the difference. Demand, the whole relationship, this downward sloping red line. Quantity demanded, the quantity we will purchase at one price, signified by a point such as point A here on my demand curve. So let's look at another example, my pizza example. And my numbers are a little messed up, so I'm going to go ahead as just filling in, and I'm going to fix these. This would be a price of 15, and this is 12, and then we have 9, 6, and 3. And then down here we should have 8, 14 million, 20 million, 26 million, and 32. Oh, excuse me, guys. That should say 32. My apologies, going between PowerPoint and Google Slides messes these up some. So this is, over here on the left, we have what we call a demand schedule. So it's just a chart telling us that relationship, okay, between our goods price and the quantity that we want to purchase. And so you can see we have 5 combinations were given. We're told, hey, at a price of 15, we want to buy 8 million a week. But if the price is 6, we want to buy 26 million. So then over here on the right, this is my demand curve. This is my graph, right? And so all I've done is taken the information from the demand schedule and I've put it into a graph. That's all we do here, okay? So you should be able to plot these points, A through E, draw your connecting line. You have a downward sloping demand curve. Downward sloping. Now, significant? Yes. If we were to calculate the slope of this line, we would find that it has a negative value. And that's important because that describes our relationship between price and quantity, okay? Because my line has a negative value, there is an inverse relationship. Write that word down for you. Inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. What does it mean? They move in opposite directions. Check this out. Look at price. 15 to 12 to 9 to 3. So price here is decreasing. So if that's true, if they move in opposite directions, we would expect to see quantity increasing. Do we? Yes, we do. 8, 14, 20. So as price drops, consumers are willing and able to buy more, thus the inverse relationship that we have. Now again, this whole line is my demand curve, or we call it our demand curve, and it represents overall demand for pizza. 1 point on the line, like point C, okay? That is the quantity demanded at a particular price. Go back over here to your chart. At point C, price is 9, quantity demanded is 20. And that's what this says. Look, price is 9, quantity demanded is 20 million, okay? So let's talk a little bit more about the differences here. If we have what's called a change in quantity demanded, we represent this by what we call movement along the demand curve. This always occurs due to a change in my price. So again, I was at point C, price was 9, quantity demanded was 20. But what if price increases? What if price goes from 9 to 12? Well, I move along my demand curve from point B from point C to point B. And now my quantity is only 14. My quantity demanded is only 14 million. So price changed from 9 to 12. I show this by moving up along my demand curve, and now I have a new quantity demanded of 14 million. So that's a change in quantity demanded, always due to a change in price. So it's always because there's a change in price, okay? Law of demand, so we have an economic theory here. It says that for almost all goods and services, a higher price means a lower quantity demanded, and then conversely, a lower price means a higher quantity demanded. Again, I already mentioned this, so there is an inverse relationship. And you'll see me, I'll abbreviate this sometimes in lectures. I'll call it LOD, law of demand, okay? So law of demand is just describing that inverse relationship. All right, I'm going to skip that one. Individual versus market. So individual demand is the relationship between price and the quantity that one person will buy, okay? Well, how do we go from individual to market? We just sum it up. So let's say we're in the market for lattes, okay? And you've got your professor, and here's price. And so the lattes might be $5 or $3 or $1. And if they're $5, I'm going to buy 1 a week. And if they're $3, I'm going to buy 2 a week. And if they're $1, I'm going to buy 5 every week. Okay? That's my individual demand. But the firms are more interested in seeing market demand. They don't want to just know about one consumer. We want to know about all the consumers. So maybe there's 2 more consumers in my market, Sue and Bob. So first we need to know Sue's individual demand. Okay, well at $5, she's not buying any. At $3, she will buy 1. And at $1, she will buy 4. Okay. Bob at $5 is going to buy 2. At $3, he will buy 3. And at $1, he will buy 5. So now we can get to the quantity demanded for the market. by simply summing up at each price. So you go down each price, okay, and we just add these up. Add, 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 add. So at a price of 5, it's 1, 0, and 2, or quantity demanded for the market is 3. At a price of 3, it's 2 plus 1 plus 3, or 6. And at a price of 1, it's 5 plus 4 plus 5, or 14. So now, taking this first column of price and this last column of quantity demanded in the market would give us market demand for lattes. Okay, so again, we're just summing up the quantities at each price. Okay, so we've talked about a change in quantity demanded. It's because price changes. Now we need to talk about a change in demand, and these are two very different things, okay? So a change in demand is shown by a shift in our demand curve. So this red line is our original, and then we shift over, we call this a shift to the right, to this green line, our new demand curve. And what can cause this? It will always be some factor other than the price of our product. Remember, if the price of my pizza changes, maybe we were down here at 5. Well, then that's point A. And at point A, maybe this is 50. But then price increases to 8. Well, again, I have movement along. Now I'm at point B, and now my quantity is only 25. So that's a change in quantity demanded. But a change in demand will be caused by a different factor, and we'll have a whole new demand curve, okay? Basically, it's one of our assumptions. An assumption is going to change. So if you recall from my math and graph review in chapter 1, we had an example where we had a graph and it said, it was something like, here's how far we'll go. I think our line was like this, but it was showing the relationship between hours in a car. Between hours in a car, so hours time, and miles driven, okay? And what we saw was the longer we were in the car, the farther we were able to go, right? But what we realized was we were assuming something, and what we were assuming was our speed. And I think originally our speed was like 50 miles per hour, okay? Well, that impacted the relationship between hours in the car and the number of miles traveled. But then we changed the assumption. So we went from a speed of 50 to like a speed of 40. And what did we see? We saw a line shift. We had a whole new line, okay? Because now we were going to have to be in the car longer to travel the same amount of miles. And so it was something like this. We had this line shift. So that's what I'm talking about here. So again, a change in demand is when there's some change on our consumers' buying plans, something other than the price of our pizza, okay, the price of our good. And so what happens is the quantity that people are going to buy will change at each and every price. And so we shift our demand curve. Now, if we are showing an increased quantity at every price, then we say demand increases, and we show that by shifting to the right. On the other hand, if at every price quantity is decreasing, then we will say demand decreases, and we show this by shifting to the left. Here are our 5 factors that will shift demand. Income of consumers, the price, not of our good, but the price of related goods, and we'll talk in a second how goods might be related. Consumer expectations, the demographics of my population, or consumer preferences. Those are my 5 factors that can shift or change demand. Okay, and so here we go. We have an increase in demand for pizza as shown in this graph. So we started at this darker blue line, demand curve D, and we shifted to the right to this lighter blue line, demand curve D prime. And so you can see at each and every price, right, at a price of 12, we were going to have a quantity demanded of 14 million. Now we have a quantity demanded of 20 million. But if you look at the next price, at a price of 9, well, at a price of 9, we were at 20, and now we're at 26. At a price of 6, we were at 26, now we're at 32. So at each and every price, quantity demanded has increased, and we call this an increase in demand. Conversely, look here, we start at D1, the lighter blue line, and then we shift to the left to D3, the darker blue. And this is showing a decrease in demand. And we even have our demand schedule here. So again, column 1 is showing price. Column 2 is the original quantity demanded, so D1. And then column 3 is showing the new quantity demanded, or how we get to D3. And so you see at each and every price, my quantity demanded has decreased by 10 million pounds of coffee per month. Let's talk for a moment about this shifting left and right. Remember, this is my origin down here, a value of 0. So if I'm trying to show decreased quantities, I need to move back towards the origin. And so that's why a decrease is a leftward shift. Okay. On the other hand, if I were showing increased quantities, I need to move where values are greater. I need to move away from the origin like this to D4. Okay. And that would show an increase, a shifting to the right. So let's talk some more about these 5 factors. So the first one is income. This is fairly intuitive. Income goes up. Guess what? Demand goes up, right? So we want more things, we shift to the right. Income goes down, we enter a recession, people are laid off, they lose their jobs, demand for things goes down, okay? That's how income impacts demand. As long as the good that we're talking about is classified as a normal good. Now, here's the thing. There's not this listing in your textbook or in Google of these are all the normal goods. No. It's simply, here's how we define what a normal good is. If that good meets this definition, it is classified as normal. So, a normal good is a good for which, when income goes up, demand for that good also goes up. Then it's normal. However, if as income increases, demand for the good actually decreases, we classify those goods as inferior. Think of things like cheaper food, used items, so used furniture, used clothing, okay? Those are typically things that we think of as inferior goods. Okay, this is the hardest one in terms of demand. This is a change in price, but not the price of our goods. So we're not talking about the price of a pizza or the price of the latte, the price of coffee. We're talking about the price of a related good. Goods can be related to each other both in consumption and production. Right now, we're just going to focus on the consumption relationships. So, there's 2 ways that they can be related to each other. 1, goods can be substitutes for one another, meaning they're used in place of, or goods can be complements to one another, meaning that they go together. Okay? So, a substitute good, right? Could be coffee, hot tea. They're both hot beverages. They're both caffeinated. A lot of people drink them first thing in the morning. Those are substitute goods, right? Down here in the South, where Coca-Cola is king, right? Coca-Cola's headquarters are right here in Atlanta. I live in Georgia, so we're all about Coca-Cola down here. But there's a equally sugary, carbonated soda beverage called Pepsi. So Coca-Cola and Pepsi are substitutes for each other. Okay? So they can be used in place of. So what we see is if the price of a substitute rises, then the demand for my good increases. Okay? Let's go back to our pizza example. Let's say, I know this is true for some of my friends, if they're going to watch football, then maybe they want to eat some pizza, or maybe they would like to eat and order some wings. Regardless, we don't want to cook because we're going to watch football, okay? So what I'm saying here is if the price of wings increases, it will impact the demand for pizza. Why? Well, because if the price of wings increases, then the law of demand says the quantity purchased of wings will go down. Remember, inverse relationship. So if I'm not buying as many wings on Super Bowl Sunday because their price went up, guess what happens? I need more pizza. Therefore, the demand for pizza will increase. Okay? We could look at it the other way. If the price of wings goes down, okay, so the price of wings decreases, then law of demand says the quantity purchased would go up. If I'm buying more wings, I don't need as much pizza, and so my demand for pizza would then decrease. Okay, so that's how it works. So it could be the price of substitute rises, demand increases, but if the price of the substitute falls, then demand would actually decrease. That's if they're substitutes, though. We can also have goods that are complements, goods that go together. Okay, so they're used together. Peanut butter and jelly, right? A hamburger and a hamburger bun. Tires and an automobile, okay? And so what we see here is if the price of the complement falls, then demand for our other good increases. So let's go back to my pizza example. You know, I think there's a lot of different things that we can put on pizza. Everyone has their different favorite pizzas, right? But I feel like one thing we have to have with pizza, if we're going to have pizza, it's going to have some cheese. I can even make do with different sauces. Like I could get by with having not a tomato sauce, but I'm going to need some cheese on my pizza. So these two go together, okay? So what I'm saying here is if the price of cheese decreases, then law of demand says the quantity demanded of cheese will increase. We buy more cheese. Well, because we're buying more cheese, what are we going to do? We're going to have an increased demand for pizza. So the demand for pizza will increase, okay? On the other hand, if we went to the store and the price of cheese had increased, okay, then guess what, kids? I don't think we're going to make homemade pizzas tonight. The price of cheese has gone up. So we would actually see demand decrease, okay? So goods that go together, complements. All right, so let's talk about the third factor, consumer expectations. So it's an expectation of two different things, an expectation of future income and an expectation of price. So if we think our income is going up in the future, we actually see demand increase today, okay? When you are going to graduate in May, you have a new contract for a new job signed in April. You don't wait till June 15th when you get the first paycheck. You go ahead and you start buying more stuff today. Price expectations, if we think prices are going up in the future, we will actually buy more today. This happens every time the USPS increases postage on stamps. People will go out and they will buy more stamps now before the price increase happens. Okay. Intuitively, the larger our population, greater demand for goods, right? That should make sense. But it doesn't just matter the size of my population. What also matters is what we call the socioeconomic makeup or the demographics of that population. So when we had our baby boom generation here in the U.S., we saw an increase for all things in demand that you need for babies, car seats, diapers, okay? All of those saw an increase in demand. Well, that large generation, right? They were called the baby boomers because that generation was much larger than the ones before it and the ones after it. Well, that group of our population, they're older now. They're hitting retirement age. So what are we seeing? We're seeing an increase in demand for medical services, for assisted living facilities, okay? So it also matters the composition of our population. Now, let's say we have seen a change in a market. Okay, we know that demand has changed. We know it's increased maybe. We don't know why. So we go back and we try to look. Well, did income go up? No. Did a price of a related good change? No. Did expectations change? No. Did our composition of the population change? No. Well, my goodness then, why did demand increase? When that happens, we say, well, there must have been a change in consumer taste or consumer preferences. So that's kind of like the catch-all when we can't explain it with our first four factors. Okay, so just kind of summarizing this first section here on demand. If the price of my good changes, so this is back to my market for pizza. So the price of pizza changes, but nothing else does. Then we say quantity demanded changes and there is movement along the demand curve. So moving here from point A to point B would be a decrease in quantity demanded. Why did it happen? Because price rose, right? Maybe price was 5 and now price is 8, okay? If we go down here, sorry, I got messed up a little, down to from A to C, that is an increase in quantity demanded because price dropped down to $3. This is different from a change in demand. A change in demand happens when one of those 5 factors influences my market for pizza. So let's say consumer income goes up, then I shift to the right from D sub 0 to D1, showing an increase in demand. Or if consumer income goes down, then I shift to the left toward the origin, showing a decrease in demand, D2. Okay, I hope this helps. Be sure to catch the next 2 videos to wrap up Chapter 4.